So, growing up, we always had pets. The typical kind of pets you'd imagine for a normal suburban family in the 70s. We had dogs and cats and salamanders and ducks and frogs and toads and, squirrels and all these kind of things. Because my mother was crazy about wildlife. She was forever scooping things up and bringing things in and nursing things back to health. Whatever God's creature managed to stumble along into our backyard, she'd bring in and take care of. And she had this song that she'd like to sing, and she'd customize it to whichever of God's creatures she was helping at the time. And it went a little like this. Be kind to your web-footed friends, 'cause that duck might be somebody's mother. Yeah, we had ducks. Every year for Easter, we'd get ducks. We'd get candy, too, right alongside a toothbrush in our Easter basket. But those ducks would show up as golden, fluffy bits of goodness. And then they'd grow up into snowy white, foul-smelling, long-necked tyrants. So we'd set them free at the neighborhood lake. My mom was really good at naming the animals. She came up with these wonderfully romantic and poetic names, like one of the pairs of ducks she named Anthony and Cleopatra. And then we had a really dark black poodle that she named Anisette. And we had a Doberman that she named Maximilian von Bismarck. And this was all wonderful. And every once in a while she'd let me name the animals, but I wasn't very good at it. We had this squirrel that I named Boy, but then she promptly had babies, so that was out. And I found a salamander that I named Sally, and a toad that I named Toady. And we actually had a seagull, and I named it Seagully, so... By the time we got the cat, I was kind of burnt out on the whole thing, and I just named it Cat, but it wasn't going to come when you called anyway, so it didn't matter. So the dogs and the cats and the ducks we got on purpose, but the animals that were the most interesting were the ones we got by accident, like that squirrel who pretty much adopted us, or Alfonse, a baby bird clearly named by my mother. We found Alfonse one morning after a thunderstorm. He'd gotten knocked out of his nest and was flailing around in the backyard. We scooped him up and brought him in. He was a grackle, one of those yellow-eyed blackbirds, a little smaller than a crow. He was just a baby, though, so he was still all fluffy and kind of brownish black. He didn't have any of that gorgeous, iridescent purple and green oil spot kind of color that the adult grackles have. Didn't have any of the attitude yet, either. He was really cute, and we kept him in a laundry basket in the garage. And we put sticks and pieces of grass in the basket so he'd feel at home. And we fed him with an eyedropper. You might have done this yourself, you know, little squirts of milk into the corner of his beak. I don't know why we thought a bird would like milk, but I think that's what... I got Ranger Rick magazine at the time, and I'm pretty sure that that was their suggestion. But after a while, Alphonse was able to hop out of the laundry basket, and he'd kind of send himself careening around the garage, trying to teach himself how to fly. So he'd leave the garage door open a little bit. He could come and go during the day, but he always came home at night. After a few weeks, he got really good at eating wads of balled-up bread right out of our hands, you know, because Wonder Bread makes those really great little balls. That's back when we still thought Wonder Bread was good for you. If you don't know it's not good for you, you can check me out at indulgenthealth.com and talk about it. But at the time for the bird, after the milk, the bread seemed like a good idea. So he was eating the bread, and he was having a great time, except that my brother was really worried about his nutrition. One rainy Saturday morning, I came downstairs to the kitchen to pour myself a bowl of Golden Grahams. Didn't know any better about that then either. But I had the Golden Grahams, and I was looking out the front window, and I saw my brother squatting on the wet, worm-covered driveway, pointing and pecking at the worms, with Alphonse sitting beside him with his head cocked. It defies reason, but it worked. My brother actually taught this bird how to eat worms. So Alphonse, now able to fly and feed himself, was ready for the big world. We closed the garage door that night, ready to let the little guy fend for himself and find his own home. But it was summer in Charleston, South Carolina, and that meant there was a torrential rainstorm that night. Gale-force winds, thunder, and lightning. When we got up in the morning, Alphonse was nowhere to be found. My brother and I were hysterical. We were combing the backyard looking for what we were sure was going to be a lifeless, soggy clump of feathers. But my mother wasn't worried at all. She just walked out into the backyard and extended her arms like some sort of an earth goddess, and she began to sing. Alphonse, And whoop, 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 Alfonse came swooping out of a tree, this gorgeous, powerful, shimmering black bird, and landed right on her arm. It was amazing. For weeks, Alfonse was at our beck and call. We'd feed him pieces of bread, and he'd strut around the backyard while my mom gardened. It was all quite cozy. We were one big happy family. But it was summer in Charleston, South Carolina, and that meant it was time for us to move. Because my dad was in the Navy, and we had to move all the time. My parents had planned it so we'd move right in the middle of the summer, so we wouldn't mess up our school. But if you have ever been a kid, you know that moving in the summer is absolutely the worst thing that could possibly happen to you. You show up in the new town, all the neighborhood kids are gone to camp or their grandparents, and by the time school finally does start, you have to walk in cold, having spent the summer alone and knowing no one. But grown-ups make these decisions, and grown-ups don't want to interrupt your school, so it was summer and we were moving. Alfonse was sitting on my shoulder when the movers arrived. A crew of the biggest, burliest, blackest men I had ever seen. These guys were huge. They were mean and they were tough, and one of them picked up our TV like it was a bag of groceries and carried it out to the truck all by himself. Now, Alfonse didn't seem too pleased about having these intruders in his space, walking through his garage, stacking up boxes in his backyard. Mom pulled my brother and I aside and told us it was time to take Alfonse to the lake, like we had with the ducks. She said that we were moving and it was time for Alfonse to move too. So we got the laundry basket, we got some grass and a couple slices of Wonder Bread, and we carried Alfonse to the other side of the neighborhood, down by the lake. We cut through some neighbors' yards and we went the long way around the block as to confuse him. And then we left him and his basket and his things by this big tree with a branch that overarched the lake. We thought he'd like it there. We didn't talk much on the way back to the house. My brother and I just kind of took turns kicking a rock between us as we headed back. He beat us there. As we approached the house, we noticed our living room couch on its side in the driveway, and from the backyard we heard shouts and squawks. My brother and I ran around back to see the burliest of the movers, running in circles in the backyard with his arms flailing in the air, just squealing, "Get him off me! Get him off me!" as Alfonse swooped and squawked in full-on air defense. This man was being dive-bombed by the bird. Eventually, he locked himself in the cab of the truck, and my brother and I got a hold of Alfonse. The other three movers finished packing our stuff, and my brother and I sat in the backyard with Alfonse, feeding him bread and chastising him out loud while we congratulated him under our breath. We said, "Way to go, Alfonse, that was dynamite." The moving van left around 5, and we all piled into the Pinto and left not too long after that. Of course, we had to leave Alfonse there. My brother and I twisted around in the back seat and watched as we drove away, our big black bird pacing the driveway, still on patrol. Man, I hope he was nice to the new people when they moved in, and, well, I really hope the new people were nice to Alfonse. Thank you.